Hi, Jeannie.
Hello.
Good to see you today. Uh, I am happy to talk to you about the curriculum model in this conversation. The curriculum model for Eastwest Somatics Institute, which includes Shin Somatics methods, which we have developed at the Institute. And since ISMETA has invited the approved training programs to present videos on their website, or it's our website. I thought a good way to explain the program would be through the curriculum model.
Yeah, I was thinking if you could
Mhm.
tell us a bit about the process, because you've developed this program over a number of decades, and to help us understand what the methodology is for Shin somatics and all that that includes, including land to water yoga, the hands-on work. So can you give us a sense of how this has evolved?
Yes, Jeannie, and the dream work that you facilitate in terms of dance also, and you've been with it through these decades, all of it. Thank you. Um, 34 years now. East West was established in 1990. And Jeannie was one of my first students. In fact, I should say, probably you were the first Jeannie because you were in the first class that I taught on the philosophy of dance.
Yes.
And the philosophy of dance for me has grown and grown. And it's grown for you too, I think, widely into work with Jungian psychology and probably in other directions too.
Yes, I think over the years, we've we've pulled in kind of the essence of um, a variety of ways of working in an embodied manner, whether it's psychological, spiritual, philosophical. I think they all touch into the work that is now Shin somatics.
Thank you. I think one of the things that inspired me to work with curriculum models was my husband. His PhD was in curriculum building. And he told me I needed to have a curriculum model for my work because when you have a good model, it does really embody your philosophy and it guides your work over the years, and models can change too. And didn't realize it in the beginning that I was building a school, but eventually it has become a school that many people have enjoyed and are now carrying these processes, Shin somatics processes forward.
Mhm.
Do you think we should have a word about Shin before we talk about the model?
Maybe a definition would be a good start.
Okay. Shin is a Japanese and I believe Chinese word as well. It's very deeply embedded in Japanese culture and it has several meanings. Uh, its meaning that I use is comes from the calligraphy of my Zen teacher, Shin Ichinyo. Shin is body in the calligraphy. The next part is Shin. That's mind. It's the same. Ichinyo is meaning as things as they are, or means the same. So body and mind are one, is a translation, so my Zen teacher told me, of Shin Shin Ichinyo. That was the calligraphy that I used for years and years, but I didn't call my methods Shin until I experienced Shin in Buto with my mentor, or he's the son of my mentor, Ono Kazuo's son, Yoshito Ono, and they were both my mentors, but Yoshito was like 1 year older than I, so just about the same age. In his workshops, he started to develop Shin. as, and he would say the whole, one whole hour would be on Shin. Shin is, he said, a slow growing orchid that you carry for 7 years because Shin takes 7 years to grow. And we carried this orchid across the studio. That was the whole class, carrying an orchid. Um, Shin, then he also had another meaning for it. His meaning for it was the patience of not starting.
Mm.
Now that's a bit of a conundrum, and how very Zen to get you to think, because how can you be so patient that you don't start? And would that be wise?
Well, and it certainly isn't a piece of Western society mentality either. That's a piece of
No,
so exceptional.
exceptional. I think it carries the somewhat the meaning of ma. That is a word that's out of Zen and out of cosmology in Japan. Ma is the space between it in our world, Jeannie, between somatics and Jung and you and me, would be liminal time. That
Mhm.
would be the closest translation. So we have Shin as grounding the work, and the model developed gradually. Um, and it wasn't until my students urged me to, will you write down these things we are doing, Sondra? And so we can remember them. They're scattered in our notebooks. Uh, and so with Karen Smith, my student from the UK, we sat and we went through, both of us remembering everything as best we could, and started to organize it and realized that it fell together conceptually very beautifully. She was studying pedagogical principles, and was studying the work of John Heron at the time. So some of that thinking enters into one of the parts of the learning cycle. Should we, let's see. So the model developed very gradually, and it probably was about 15 years of doing East-West Somatics work, being in the process, these things developing, and finally we had a school that we could recognize as cohesive and yet diverse.
Yeah.
And
At
so the model developed out of that.
what point did Ismeta recognize Eastwest Somatics Institute?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, and that I actually do remember. 1997.
Okay, so it's
I'll
about
tell you how
7 years after you
that
started.
7 years after I started, uh, I knew I couldn't apply to Ismeta until I had 3 graduates.
Oh, interesting.
And it's not that it took that long for 3 graduates. Once I realized I did want to get certified through Ismeta and realized the application process, then it was not that difficult. I'd had people involved, and the ISMETA standards were clear, and I saw that we could meet those. So I started working toward that and applied in 1997. So 7 years after I started, but I have to say I did know about ISMETA because I was in the groundwork process for establishing ISMETA when we were applying for registration to get registration marks for somatic work.
As we look at your curriculum model, what's interesting to me is it's a series of concentric circles that come into a center circle. So, can we talk about what those different kind of bands of principles and processes are about as you're clarifying your curriculum development?
I would like to, because I finally did get it down. on paper, on cardboard, in a way that we can work through a spiral to have this all work. But you have a better image of it that you could probably share, Jimmy.
Yeah, so here it is.
So here it is. And if you look in the middle, you see what Jeannie and I have been talking about. Shin, body and mind are one, or the patience of not starting, if you want to be more esoteric. And there are three processes that are elemental, the elements of our work: somatic yoga and meditation. You see these in the middle. And dance experiences, or I sometimes call that intuitive dance experiences. And Shin somatics, movement integration, and actually also call that Shin somatics registered mark, body work, which is for us movement integration and working with movement patterns and repatterning. And if you go to the next circle out, you see the processes. We see process, that word right up at the top, Jeannie. So what are the processes that we do that spring from the somatic yoga, the intuitive dance, and the body work? Land to water yoga is key, and it is formalized, and yet it is creative. It has patterns that are clear, and it comes out of nature images. And because it has those patterning processes, as we teach people land to water yoga, we can use those same patterns in the body work. So there's a blend over and across of all of the processes and principles. If you go around to the right from land to water, you see mindfulness meditation right up here at the right, Jeannie. Processes. There's mindfulness meditation. I could call it silent meditation. Many people teach meditation as a visualization process. I teach it the Eastern way, which is the value of being in silence. So you listen to yourself, and not necessarily with that intent, but when you are in silence, um, things about you and your life and your relationships, your problems, whatever, they ruminate and they do come to attention, and you find ways of letting those flow by, saying thoughts are just thoughts, so that you can clear the mind of its clutter. Now, that's part of mindfulness meditation, maybe taught a little bit like that by Jon Kabat-Zinn and others. I've been a Zen meditator. That's what I do carry away from Zen. So some of the Zen ways of moving into silence, I do emphasize. I wouldn't call what I teach Zen meditation, just that I've learned principles that are helpful. And if we go down from the mindfulness meditation down, focusing imagination, Jeannie, is the next thing we're moving down. Yeah. I'll try to be brief about these things. Can you believe all of this goes on? Um, Focusing imagination, Jeannie, this is your world.
Yeah.
Um, the and it moves into dream work, or what we call dancing the dream body.
Mhm.
But there are other ways of focusing the imagination, sitting in pairs and waiting for an image to come to the mind, the way Eugene Gendlin taught focusing. And he was a great somatic psychologist. Using the images that come up in various contexts, including in body work. I'm just teaching people the power of image and using images that come to people when you are doing body work with them. Excavating body memory. Yes. Um, this is emotional work, but I wouldn't say that the somatic work is about venting emotions. It's not about venting. For us, it's about acknowledging this emotional life that we have and developing emotional intelligence so we can carry that kind of emotional intelligence out into the world and uh, be more successful in our lives. Flow repatterning is uh, down there next. Flow repatterning is one of the processes that, like, that's what's going on in land to water yoga. It's what's going on in the body work. Teaching through touch. So we consider that in depth, what that means and how to do it. Clearing the body. We have various clearings that take place in the body work and also in land to water yoga as we access the meaning of the body through the chakras and acknowledge the, for instance, just chakra number one, that the feet and legs are representative of protection and they're representing family. That's the root. And so, how do you clear that? By allowing the imagination to move there and by allowing it to be and recognizing it. There are shadows in terms of the chakra work too. So the shadow there would be, I feel vulnerable. I don't have enough.
Mhm.
I don't feel protected. Um, so part of what you can do when you're in a safe space is allow that protection to come and be there for you instead of worrying that you don't have enough. One of our core narratives is, I am enough. And how do you practice that? That's part of clearing the body. Contact unwinding, that's a fun process that uses body work. And it's close to, maybe partly inspired by contact improvisation. But in contact improvisation, for those people who know what contact improvisation is and they've experienced it, there is a reciprocity of giving and taking weight spontaneously and an even partnership in doing that, although unevenness could probably arrive. We do contact unwinding with a guide and a mover. So one person is the mover, the other person is following and guiding the mover. And it is kind of a bodywork process, but it's spontaneous and free. And the people who learn how to do this and do enjoy it, learn how to use their hands in expert ways. It's like teaching through touch.
That's
Chakra unwinding. I've already spoken of the chakras. And Jeannie, you've done a great deal with chakra unwinding. There are several ways to do it, and maybe ways we haven't explored. Once you understand the creativity in the body and the power of acknowledging the energy vortexes and that the body's powers are differentiated and yet we are whole, you can go to those specific places and draw forward whatever's there for that particular day. Now,
yes.
when I say the difference, so The feet are not like the head. They're going to have very different feelings, and I use the word powers, but uh, functions, and what would be a good word for it, Jeannie?
Well, I mean, a piece of it is different parts of the body hold their own memories and experiences. And so when someone is touching through the shoulder blades in response to the person, I mean, that's to the heart center and the lungs and the arms. And so it's going to bring up a whole different pattern of movement spontaneously from the mover than if the person is just touching the back of their head. So, and also the movement capacity of the different areas of the body are invited to kind of come into fullness.
Thank you. Witnessed dances, and we'll just keep moving much more quickly now. This people have experienced as authentic movement. I call it witnessed dances, and witnessed movement. I also call it depth movement dance. Depth movement dance processes depth movement dance therapy as well. It includes artwork, but it doesn't have to include artwork. Authentic movement usually does. We can dance back what we've witnessed. We don't always have to paint it back. There are other ways of there are many ways of witnessing the spontaneous dances of people, usually with their eyes coming through with their eyes closed. So it's not about dancing on stage. It's about being in the moment. Dance in the environment. We love that. We go to Snow Canyon. We do use dance maps, and people learn how to develop dance maps to dance in all kinds of environments that are interesting outside. I would say that a dance studio is an environment too. And when you're really paying attention to environment, you get different messages coming through about what you're doing and what kind, you get different associations with the soma and um, somatic feelings and senses. The next thing is intuitive dances. We've already been talking about that. Now, Jeannie, move up one more. Dancing, dream, and image. Jeannie has a workshop coming up this summer in July, which is dealing with image and dream work. And I call it also dancing the dream body. It has a conference attached on the first day.
Yes. July 26th is the conference day that we're open to receiving proposals.
Thank you, Jeannie. People really enjoy the dream work as part of our curriculum. And I am finding more and more how it is associative, and it's not isolated or off by itself. It relates to everything we do as well.
I mean, we're all dreamers, whether we pay attention to them or not. And oftentimes we have very somatic dreams where we wake up feeling the sensation that was occurring in the dream. So those are the ones in particular that working somatically is, it's almost designed to do that, some way to body forth this imagery that comes in the night.
Thank you. I've become interested because I've been thinking about and writing about somatics, about how dream and ecology uh, relate. Because I believe if we were to pay attention to the ecological aspects of our dreams, we would find a great richness there. I go back to some of my dreams and I'm just asking myself about, well, what was the environment like? Wow, I was tumbling down these vast terrains and uh, I was traveling into places that were foreboding or welcoming. So I think that's ecological work too.
Yes. And I would say too, just um, as we're setting the stage for a play, setting is everything. And Jung felt very similarly that the setting, the dreamscape, is highly significant to what's unfolding in the dream. So certainly our ecological environment, whether it's man-made, it's out in the woods, it's at the ocean, all of that imagery has a lot to offer us as we're trying to find meaning through our dreams and through embodying our dreams.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for that word, dreamscape. I have a summer session coming up with Ismeta that will be given for the public, and you and I are doing one of those sessions together. I think we should call it Dreamscape.
I love that.
Uh, Adaptive yoga. And I have done quite a bit of adapting the ease that I like to promote in yoga for people who are in pain, people who have physical limitations. It's really interesting to take some of these patterns, particularly the ones of land to water yoga, the patterns, and adapt them for special needs. People do benefit from that. And so I teach people how to adapt yoga patterning. So if we go to the next one, it's too big. There's too much up in the next whole spiral to, but I'll just go quickly and without explaining. There are principles: reflective questioning, listening for what has heart, focusing attention, saying yes whenever we can, say yes to life, say yes to your body, say yes to having fun, say yes to being crazy sometimes, holding clear intention, finding openings, working with approximations. I got this word from the Feldenkrais work, that whatever process we're in doesn't have to be tending toward perfection or mastery. We don't use perfection and mastery as terms of our work. We use approximations, which means we're always in a process. It's a first approximation. We'll try it again. It's the second approximation. Maybe we get up to 20 approximations. Resting to learn. Learning as you do. Doing less to feel more. As Mies van der Rohe says, less is more in architecture and life. Moving in the moment. Pleasure in movement. Why do any of this if it doesn't bring you pleasure? Bringing awareness to whatever it is we're bringing awareness to, we bring awareness. Moving with nature, not always easy to know what that is, but we stay curious about it. Being held, definitely a part of bodywork. What does it feel like to have your leg supported and held? Have the weight taken out of it, the work taken out of it. Deep listening, being with what is, that is, not wishing things to be otherwise, being with what is. Then you can do something from that point. If you're wishing always for things to be otherwise, you can't move from that place. Suspending expectation, so you can be surprised. Suspending judgment, really a hard one, is just a lifetime practice that we practice at East-West. Trusting intuition. Drawing forth. I got that one from Plato and from studying Plato. and taking classes on Platonic philosophy. He believed that education was simply a matter of drawing forth what the person already knows. So that's what I mean by drawing forth. Not knowing, that's moving into existentialism there. Basic principle of existential philosophy. Uh, how important is not knowing? Well, I just leave you with that. Not interpreting. And that would be like not interpreting other people's lives for them. And Jeannie, could you just say a word about not interpreting other people's dreams for them?
Yes, absolutely. Because the intention, as you use the word curiosity, as we witness each other's dreams and dream dances, it's about getting curious and um, asking. Early on, you talked about reflective questioning. It works the same with dream work as opposed to interrogating. You wouldn't invite a friend into your home and then interrogate them about what they've done since the last time you saw them. You get curious, and the same with dream and somatic movement. It invites an unfolding for the individual, whether it's the dreamer, the mover, to, of course, not feel judged, but also not feel like you're trying to put a label on my forehead or label my dream or label what's wrong with my movement. It's about being held, holding. We hold a space for each other, and listen. Sometimes I think of it as holy listening. There's something sacred about really being with someone on that relational level, that's not judging, it's not interpreting. Um, it's a form of unconditional positive regard Carl Rogers talked about, and I think that's a piece of this work too.
Thank you. That moves directly toward the next
Mm.
principle, not advising. We have an actual process for teaching principles of communication in our work, and it wouldn't be like principles of communication in a college course. It goes rather much more quickly, and we are interested in the somatics of it. So uh, practicing listening and speaking. And we do that in duos or in trios. If we have a trio, then one person is witnessing the speaker and the listener. So we get a little practice in not advising, listening, and speaking. And don't people want advice? Why not give them advice? Jeannie, could you speak to that?
Yes. I mean, each of us are on our own path. I think what's important is supporting them on their values and what they see as most important as their life unfolds, which would be very different than my perception of what the right thing to do is. So I swallow that and don't put that out there, because if anything goes sideways too, it's, well, you told me to do that. It's never wise to advise.
Oh, uh, the next one, not fixing. All of these, not interpreting, not advising, not fixing, seem to flow out of, you wonder, well, what's that got to do? What do these have to do with somatic work? Aren't they about just communicating with people, being in relation with them, and the kinds of things that a therapist would take seriously? Um, when people decide in the somatic work and as they're moving through it, what their path is going to be, whether they will finish and graduate from our program or probably any of these meta programs, whether they'll be a somatic educator and carry things forward in education, or whether they'll be a somatic therapist and carry things forward with individuals, they will be in communication with others. There is no way to avoid it. Verbal communication is incredibly important in the somatic work. And so we bring it to the fore and we get some practice in it, which is very helpful in relationships too. Not fixing. I think this comes out of Al-Anon and Alcoholics Anonymous when, of course, people would like to fix those persons in their family who may be in trouble. And when we see loved ones in trouble, we kind of automatically, many of us, oh, wish I could help or fix. Maybe the message is people, well, how do you empower people to help themselves? Jeannie, could you say a little bit about not fixing?
Yes, I'm thinking too, Sondra, of like physical postural issues. Um, and East West, just often the very lightest touch isn't to fix or jerk somebody's shoulders back, but often that light touch makes us aware, and that was one of the principles. Aware that, oh, I'm protecting my heart, often is the feeling. But they need to protect. I'm thinking of the concept of body armoring. Sometimes we hold our bodies as a way of protecting us from trauma that happened 20 years ago, but we still don't feel safe. So again, that holding environment, that sense of creating safety to allow the individual to make their own choices about what they're ready to do, maybe opening up their chest or maybe not so much, but not as closed, you know. It's it takes time. Somatic work is not instantaneous, ever.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Um, our work with movement is uh, the somatic work with movement in general is just wonderful because we are actually, I think, we're empowering people toward change in the movement processes that we teach. And we do uh, touch these lightly. And we respect whatever change occurs for the person. And we see a lot of change, and people experience a lot of change. It's rather interesting because it's a quiet process. Um, like I remember so much in my Feldenkrais training, lying on the floor with 80 people and having a movement lesson that we were all relating to these very discrete small patterns that people would do in their own way with their own bodies, and understanding the incredible diversity in the performance of those patterns. And sometimes you would get up and watch the class and you could see how very different people are. And the individuality was respected. When I was studying dance in more stringent forms, I have to say individuality was not respected. I love that the somatic work does respect individuality, even though it's got some general patterns that ground it. I'll use that word again. The patterning that I learned in studying ballet and modern dance was often quite strict. Graham technique is Graham technique, and you can't just do your own thing. And Vaganova ballet is what it is, and you can't just do your own thing. In land to water yoga, do you do your own thing? Not really, because you are relating to processes that are patterns that are uh, described and sometimes shown, but the way you do them is through your capacities. We all start where we are, and we learn as we do, and we gain capacity along the way. So we do have uh, respect for change as well, but we're not forcing it and we're not advising it. We're just supporting it.
I often think of it as an invitation because if someone cannot do the pattern or can't get their leg in that position, then they can adapt, and we offer those suggestions too.
Well, I had a year and a half ago a knee replacement. So I adapt all the yoga I do now, and it's very doable. It's quite possible
Yes,
to, I can get up and down from the floor, but it's not the same way I used to do it.
like,
Michelle Clay, who is one of our teachers, and well, she was actually the first graduate of Eastwest Somatics, has this curriculum model on her wall, and she's chair of the dance department at Hobart, William and Smith colleges in Geneva, New York. When I ask people, well, I ask my graduates sometime, how do you use this? Are you using this work in your teaching or in your life? And I get interesting responses. Michelle says, I have the curriculum model on my wall, and it helps me with leadership in and how I relate to people in the department.
so it has a wide ranging effective uses.
Well, if you can just imagine, leaders sometimes think they do need to know everything and advise everybody, and those are not the kinds of leaders that people appreciate.
True, true that. So ongoing training is available. Your website lets anyone interested know when in-person workshops and conferences are available as well as online. So an individual can do a portion of their training or education in East West Somatics through East West Somatics virtually now, right? As
Yes,
post-COVID, we've discovered all kinds of options.
we have. Jeannie, thanks so much for being in this conversation with me today.
My pleasure, Sondra, always to be with you.
I've learned a lot.
All right. Thank you again.
Bye bye.